together. How does that sound? Because they're not necessarily the same thing. 2020 project ideas would be things that we'd like to focus on as a commission in 2020, and hot topics might be those things, and it might just be things that we need to be aware of. So let's take, we're a little ahead of our agenda anyway, so let's go ahead and take at least 5 minutes to talk about hot topics. So, Kim Jones, you are up. And maybe when people speak, just because we still have some folks who are a little bit new to the commission, maybe just give your, actually, pause for a second. I just want to make sure that people who have only been to a couple meetings remember who the players are. So before we do hot topics, I actually would like to stop and just take a moment to introduce, my name is this and I come from here kind of thing. So could we go ahead on the phone, starting with Kim Jones? Could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. This is Kim Jones. I'm a professor and a dean of the School of Nursing at Linfield, now Linfield University as of last week. For 20 years, I've done research. I think that's my seat within this committee.
Thank you. David Eisen?
Hi, David Eisen, Quest Center for Integrative Health. I've been on a commission for several years now. We do the WISH program. I am a doctor of Chinese medicine, an acupuncturist, and a recovering social worker.
Kevin Cuccaro, Vice Chair.
Kevin Cuccaro. I am a physician and traditionally trained pain specialist, but I focus on up-to-date pain science and a lot of education interventions, predominantly for clinicians. And so I guess my input is really around the language of pain and making sure that we're aligned with up-to-date, modern, hopeful, empowering pain science.
Oh, my God.
And based in Corvallis.
Yeah, based in Corvallis.
Thank you. Okay, Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, hi. I'm a naturopathic physician in private practice in Hillsborough, and I've been on the commission now nearing the end of my second term.
Thank you. Let's see, Shad Thomas. Oh, and Kevin is in, did you say Hillsborough? Thank you.
Yes.
Shad Thomas.
Hi, I'm Shad Thomas. I'm the residential programs director and outpatient-based opioid treatment program supervisor for New Directions Northwest in Baker City, Oregon. I'm an LCSW and EADC 3, and I've been on the commission since December.
That's who they brought in.
Thanks, Shad. Michelle Coder.
Stop it.
Hi, Michelle Coder. I've been on the commission for several years now as well, my second term, and I am the pharmacy and lab director for Multnomah County Health Department.
Okay. Thank you. Alyssa Franzen.
Alyssa Franzen. I'm the Chief Dental Officer at Care Oregon and represent the oral health perspective on the commission.
Great. And physically you are located in?
Portland.
And Ruben Halpern.
Yeah, this is Ruben Halpern. I'm also nearing the end of my second term. I am a general internist by trade, but for the last 8 months I've been working as one of the medical directors for Providence Health Plan.
Thank you. Anthony Marone.
Hi, this is Anthony Marone. I'm a chiropractic physician, and I've been on the pain commission for almost close to 6 years in private practice for most of that time, and for the last 3 years I've worked in Providence Integrative Medicine Department within the Providence Cancer Institute.
So in Portland?
Yes, Portland.
Okay, great. And Michelle Maricos in the room.
Hi, my name is Michelle Maricos. I am from Southern Oregon. I'm a peer support specialist for chronic pain and patient living with chronic pain. And I've traditionally served on the Oregon Pain Guidance Group and now currently serving on the OHSU Pain and Opioid ECHO faculty. So thank you all for having me. This is my first term and first real meeting.
Great. Norris, thank
coordinator for the Oregon Health Authority, a management commission out of care and quality fund.
Thank you. And I think I forgot Jason Gingrich.
Hi, I'm Jason Gingrich. I'm Health Evidence Review Commission Director, and I supervise Mark.
Thank you. Anybody we didn't get? Okay, so now backing up, let's go ahead and do hot topics. So, Kim, please update us.
So last week I went to the Oregon Legislature and spoke in support of Division 42 of Senate Bill 1561, which is a bill about a large bill that has lots to do with cannabis in Oregon. But Section 42 is really about the medical piece and the language around who can authorize qualifying conditions and having provider-neutral language. So I submitted testimony arguing that at least 1 in 5, Oregonians has chronic pain, and up to 90% of the medical cards are written for the indication of chronic pain, and almost half of visits to primary care are with a chronic pain diagnosis, and that we really need for people's primary care provider to be able to authorize a test that people have the condition that actually qualifies them for a medical card in Oregon. And we just don't have enough nurse practitioners to be able to also authorize those cards. We just don't have enough providers to do it. And as a result, what's happening is people are having to leave their primary care provider, go find a physician that doesn't necessarily know them, get this card authorized, and then be part of the medical marijuana program. So we provider neutral language, so instead of always saying physician, this is consider saying provider. And just as background, there are a number of other states, 6 at my last counting, that has nurse practitioners able to attest that people do have the qualifying conditions for a medical card. And just in case anyone on the phone is not familiar with how it works, physicians don't actually prescribe medical marijuana. They just fill out a form indicating that a person has one of these qualifying conditions that Oregon. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Does the commission have a stamp? The question was what the commission stance is on medical marijuana. Do we have a stamp? Can a prescriber answer that?
So we have the patient conference that we do twice a year, and our stance in that conference is that the extent to which human clinical trials support the use of medical marijuana and frame it within the risk-benefit ratio, so what are the safety issues, that we are in support of research that furthers our knowledge and safe use of medical marijuana when there are human clinical trials that support it.
Can you say the earlier part, you said something about patient conference? I didn't hear what you said at the beginning.
That patient conference we've done for about 3 years. It's when the Oregon Medical Board said that physicians can sign cards, but they recommend in 4 hours of continuing medical education on best practices around this. We put together a continuing education. We, meaning some colleagues at OHSU, and I put together some a Saturday continuing education. We've rolled it out about 5 times. The last time was fall. So I guess it would be important to me to know if our group has a stance other than that I need to know what that is.
I know that we did something, or the commission did some work on that back in 2017. So I would need to go back into the archives and take a look and see what's there, what's been finalized and approved.
Okay.
I mean, we actually rewrote a position statement on it, and I think that was Kim who kind of said it. It's not our position to necessarily advocate for or against, but to advocate for continued research and for treatments that make sense where the the risk. You know, and I think generally as a statement, we were in favor of keeping it legal and keeping it available for people who found it beneficial. So.
And this is Kim. I'd be happy to forward a link to Mark and Nora, because their emails pop up easily, that shows the representatives are and what district and how they're voting on this issue, if anybody wants to contact their person.
That would be fine.
There is a statement on your website about that. I'll send Mark the link.
Thank you.
So embarrassing.
So I think this brings up a good question. Clearly, it's not something. It's a topic that I think brings up a lot of discomfort for lots of reasons. And the question about whether it's our place to take a position or not is an interesting one, given that our role is to guide the state in best practice pain care. So that was, if it's correct that we have a statement from 2017, that's a while back, and the climate of the state has changed quite a bit, and I wonder if it might behoove us to, especially in light of this bill that's coming up currently, whether there might be a subgroup that would like to look at both our existing position and how we want to interact with this bill that's coming up. And Mark has just put up the position on the screen. I can just read it off. If I can read it, but if you can move it up a little bit. Down to the position part. Position 1, OPMC supports programs and funding for rigorous scientific evaluation of the potential therapeutic benefits of medical marijuana and the publishing of such findings. Okay, that was what we understood. And then position 2, OPMC strongly urges protection from criminal or civil penalties for patients who use medical marijuana and clinicians who certify conditions allowing use of medical marijuana as permitted under the Oregon Medical Board and state laws. The Oregon State Board of Pharmacy reviewed an extensive collection of scientific and sociological material relating to marijuana, as well as comments from the members of the public, some of whom have extensive training and experience with marijuana. Reclassified cannabis as a Schedule II medicine. And then position 3 encourages the elimination of barriers to use of medical marijuana. I'm going to just kind of shorten that. And those were our positions. So I guess, is there, just kind of checking with the group, is there an interest in creating a subgroup to review that position and to look at this bill further in a more focused way?
So this is Kim. I'll make a comment on that. The large bill, the majority of it is about agriculture and it's about commerce. It was just a small section of it that had to do with attesting to qualifying conditions and using provider-neutral language. I would suggest that maybe our position may not have changed radically since that was written, but we're in a short session, so in just a few more weeks we'll know what the stance of this bill is, and if it passes, I would be happy to work with a small task group to include some language about medical part of that bill.
Great. So this is Nora. I am gleaning from that this would be a great thing to revisit either in between now and our next meeting or at our next meeting, because we'll have more information then. Does that sound right, Kim?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other other comments on that topic?
Just
And thank you. Yeah.
Because it got out of the task force and went to Ways and Means, and March 3rd will be the final vote. So is that before or after our next?
Well, we won't have another meeting until, I believe, April.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, April 23rd. Yeah.
What the outcome of the part of the bill was that I was supporting.
Okay. Great. Any other comments on that topic? We'll be revisiting it in April, or stay tuned to your emails, and we'll send out some of that information from Kim to the whole group. Okay, great. Other hot topics?
This is Michelle Maricos. I would like to report about the Oregon Health Authority has given Mental Health Association of Oregon a grant to create a peer-to-peer pain and opioid classification certification for peers. So it will be a continuing education 20-hour course that will certify peers for chronic pain and opioids. It just got approved last week. So Mental Health Association of Oregon is working with Synergy Health Consultants.
Oh, no.
And we're creating a curriculum, but we also want to put together the curriculum with the Pain Commission's pain module as a basis. So I would like some feedback on that and some thoughts on that, and we can do that offline if you'd like also. So that project is due to be finished in the fall, and that we would start training peers in the fall for pain and opioids.
Pain and
So
opioids.
it's very exciting
What the hell
work.
is she talking
That's
about?
wonderful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Huge accomplishment.
What? Okay, keep talking.
This is Nora. I'm really glad to hear the interest in utilizing the curricula that already exists through the state, and we will have the app, which we'll be hearing updates on the module and the app later this morning. And I think that makes a lot of sense, that idea of aligning everything. And I think that it's very appropriate for the commission to be involved on a consultancy basis, at least with that. So, maybe as we move forward, there could be a subgroup that supports the work of Synergy. Yeah, and that seems like it makes a lot of sense. That's my perspective. So is there agreement about that, folks? What do you think? Other thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. This is David. We use mentors a lot in our pain program. I think it is essential, and the more people we can get trained who have lived experience in basic stuff, the better.
And to be clear, there's a peer certification process in the state, started through the recovery movement, and there's a peer wellness specialist certification that's used for a lot of different chronic conditions. This is the first time that there is a pain-specific certification.
It will be pain-specific, but there will also be an opioid component to it also, about being able to be trained to help people with opioids, tapering opioids, and all the things that come along with pain and opioids. So we could, that subgroup could have some input on those pieces too.
Other comments? Well, that's wonderful. And I like the idea that they're kind of equal voices, or that it's not just about opioids, but it's really an opportunity to teach about pain. Yes. Any other hot topics? We'll move on to project ideas in a moment, which might also be the same as a hot topic in a way. But anything else you want to, if folks have brewing or want us to know about that's going on in the works?
This is Kevin Cuccaro. I think one of the, and this is, I don't want it to get lost in here, is that if I'm remembering this correctly about the hot topics, one part about it was considering how can we in what these topics are in our regions, and so that we're not missing things that may be important into our individual communities. So things that are, so Michelle talked about Southern Oregon, and maybe Chad could talk about something in Eastern Oregon, but so that we're making sure that there's a lot of different voices in a lot of different areas of the state. So and I don't know how to do that. That was, I think, part of that conversation back in June or whatever was, how do we make sure that how do we monitor, at least kind of ask or solicit for hot topics in different regions in Oregon?
Perfect. And to piggyback on that, what I'd like to add in relationship to the peer support certification is that there's been these community forums that have happened in different places around the state on pain and opioids, and I see a huge potential for community engagement and awareness that could happen piggybacking on the idea of getting more trained people with lived experience, maybe partnered with clinicians, and I have some ideas for projects about that. Anything going on in Eastern Oregon, Chad, that we should be aware of?
Not really at this moment. Kind of quiet out here.
Okay. Anything that should be going on in Eastern Oregon?
Well, with the issue with the peers, I mean, that's awesome and great training. We face some pretty specific barriers with implementing peers in a frontier community. All the lived experience that typically happens in this very small region. So the interactions that peers have had with now people that their peers for has put them at kind of high risk, especially within the substance abuse treatment arena, at high risk of relapse, and it's been a difficult barrier to overcome, having peers from their home community.
Wow.
You just basically
That's interesting,
people like
because for us it's the exact opposite, especially from the Black African American community that have been active in their addiction within that community, get sober and clean, and want to go back and serve that community and get filled up from that experience.
Right. And they can. It's just a really small population to start with, and there's a lot of long-term interaction and family history. And I mean, our population of our town is less than 10,000. So that population is very small, and historically, running through families, there's just so much history. It kind of poses a barrier to peers with working with clients that are actively using. We haven't been too highly successful to this point. We're really kind of trying to evaluate, and I'm working with and talking with Eric Martin at MACBO about how to really support the peers so they can be effective. Other than that, I guess kind of it doesn't really affect pain management, more of the opioid use disorder problems. CHD over in LeGrand has started their OBOT program. They were part of the SOAR grant funding, as was New Directions, and those are both going really well. We've been able to recruit quite a few prescribers and have been stable and expanding those services both locally, regionally, and throughout the state with our residential programs. That's about all that's going on over here.
I wonder, and maybe we could, this could be a topic for our next session, or maybe today, depending on how time goes. But I'm interested in talking about, this is Nora, the cultural understanding of pain in Eastern Oregon. What you were just referring to, Shad, was the culture around opioid use. And I wonder how that interfaces with how the community understands pain itself, and how kind of what the state is of the stage there and what we can do to help that.
Absolutely. That would definitely be a worthy discussion. I would kind of assume that it's different than more on the west side. We do have a behavioral chronic pain treatment program that our agency runs, and it's been moderately successful. But it's always been kind of an opportunity of last resort. So when prescribers are terminating pain contracts or otherwise refusing to prescribe, they're like, well, you need to go over there. But they've already kind of made them dependent on the idea that medication is the only thing that's going to be able to help them. So it's been a struggle to increase the motivation and understanding and the idea that behavioral interventions can also help treat the chronic pain.
Well, and I would add to that, understanding pain.
Oh, absolutely.
Just changing the conversation about pain.
Oh my God.
Yep, that's been a difficult barrier because we're not getting people into our behavioral program that are really just starting down their pain journey. It's people that have been on opioids for a decade, and their beliefs around pain and what helps is pretty strong.
Wow.
I have a proposal.
This is crazy.
I think this is the year that Oregon Pain Commission gets serious about helping Eastern Oregon change the culture around knowledge of pain. And I don't think we've done a great job with that. So I would like to propose that we have a subgroup like myself and then you, Shad, if you're willing, and one or two other people who might be willing to just have a phone call, do a little bit of discussion, and bring together a structure for a conversation that we would have at our next meeting about some things that we could do that really start to target creating, kind of a pain revolution in Eastern Oregon. How does that sound to you, Shad, from where you're sitting?
Sounds wonderful. Absolutely.
So I would like to have a phone meeting with you, and is there anyone else, one or two other people who'd like to be involved in that preliminary discussion?
This is David. I would.
Okay. Michelle would also. Anybody else?
I'd be happy to help if there's space, or I don't want to.
Kevin, I think with what you've been doing in your community, I think I'd really like you to be there. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd be happy to help.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to squelch the party. So who else wants to join? And that's great. Okay, so Shad, Michelle, Nora, David. Awesome. That's great. Let's make sure that Mark, you and I, let's make sure that happens. We'll need to coordinate some time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like a 2020 project idea. Check the box. One 2020 project idea is that we will have the patient app completed. And so we probably need to get that in our hot little hands and understand OHA's formal relationship to the app. And then we can talk at the next session probably about how to roll that out and the many, many ways that we can use it. And you'll see more about what is all about that soon. What other thoughts do people have about things that we'd like to focus on? I know the legislative changes that we're talking about are one of our big projects. Anything else that stays within the scope of clinician training, community education, and legislative change? Okay, and hearing none, maybe what we can do is just briefly revisit that after we've talked through the other topics today, because there may be some other things that come up. I will add something, which is that, well, no, I'll save that because it's going to come up later. So let's go ahead and move on to the update on the proposed legislative language and changes. So, Mark, can I impose upon your wonkiness?
Sure, yeah. Dual tasking here. So, internally at OHA, we've taken a request that for the three things that were discussed at the December meeting, as well as what was voted on, for removal of the curriculum review requirements, adding massage therapists and social workers to the list of licensees that take the module, as well as a proposal for periodic review and updates with funding to go for updating the module. We haven't determined either the number of years in which licensees need to review the module or retake it, and or created a budget at this point for the request for ongoing updating. So we do have history on this as well. So, Jason, anything to add there?
Yeah, just that we'll be consulting with the commission as things move along the process.
So just to recap that, we are proposing inclusion of social workers and inclusion of massage therapists.
Oh, wow.
In the pain education requirements. And I'm sorry, what were the other parts of it that are going towards to the legislature? Was that what else?
Adding those, and then the review or renewal requirement.
The renewal requirements will be at the same time. Well, that will go through too. Okay.
And then the funding.
And funding, all of them.
And then dropping the curriculum review, right?
Okay. So what we are bringing to and there's different ways to go through this process, but this would be OHA bringing these recommendations to the legislature, kind of representing that proposal.
I can just recap that.
Yes.
So every session, or at least the long session, OHA usually sponsors one or more quote-unquote cleanup bills that just make relatively straightforward changes to statute. Sometimes they also have more substantive bills, and so there's a process where staff or commissions such as yourself submit ideas for that. And so at your last meeting last year, we talked about these ideas, and those are working through that process. There's a winnowing that happens through the year, and ideas are refined and floated with stakeholders and so forth. But that's the process we're in. And so, at this point, we can't say it will happen, but we can say it's definitely under consideration and being looked at too strongly.
Great. And so if it goes to the cutting room floor, as they would say, we have we can work with our legislative representatives to consider other ways of bringing that forward. So again, that's just to confirm for folks who have not been in on all of these discussions over the years, we have the requirement for the 1-hour online module, which is an easy thing for us to have control over and for clinicians to participate in. But then there's also an additional 6 hours, so there's a total of 7 hours of required pain education content, and there's very loose implementation of that requirement across disciplines. It's often taken not too seriously, and the idea that there's pain content in the curricula is fairly broad and sometimes not tremendously meaningful or concurrent with the pain science philosophy that the Pain Commission has embraced. So we're proposing that we drop that, but require that clinicians have to renew with the pain module every time they renew their license, because we are required to update the content. So if we're required to update the content, then clinicians should be updating their knowledge of what's in the content. That's the idea. And if that's the case, then we need funding because we don't have any funding for that. And that's what we've been able to do with the module has been. Say what? Sorry?
If there are public members listening in on the phone, if you could please mute yourself and there are the folks that are.
This is Jason. I just want to speak to the funding process and how that works. So normally when there's a bill that creates a duty on the commission, or on OHA staff, we would put a fiscal on that bill, and that goes through a process of consideration and vetting and estimating, and is attached to the bill and considered by the subcommittee. Sometimes, it happens that we put a fiscal on a bill, and somewhere along that path, it's decided that there won't be a fiscal, but you have to do it anyway. And it's a reasonable discussion. Are there existing resources for it, and so forth? So that's the way the fiscal element. The bill itself would just say, what needs to be done, and then there would be a fiscal attached in the budgeting process. And there's a whole kind of separate process for the budget. And I don't think the commission will really speak directly to that, although, of course, we as staff will give input to that process. I just wanted to be clear about how that works.
Okay, so two separate processes.
Yeah, I mean they're aligned and they're coordinated, but it works. So but it's not often that a bill says X dollars will be directly in the text of the bill, put in the payment.
I feel like I don't know that would be fully appreciated, the magnitude of how much more profoundly beneficial the new version of the module is than even the second version. I mean, the first version was outdated in terms of content, but the second version was up to date in terms of content, but it was dry as toast. I think that's
definitely aware of that, and we'll be communicating that. We've got a great product here, and we want to keep it up to date.
Okay, let us know how we can help.
I mean, we've gotten a lot of feedback on that, and I believe it is. People are well aware of that.
It's known. Okay, good. And then the last thing that will be on this.
Hey, Nora, before you go on, if you're talking about making the module a requirement to redo the module every 2 years for providers,
that's already required. That's already required.
No. The commission is required to update the module every 2 years.
What I'm saying is,
tried to take it once.
You were talking about getting rid of the requirement for the extra hours, but making the requirement that for licensing people would have to retake the module every 2 years.
Correct.
I think politically, we probably want to get sort of other organizations on board, because I could see where you might get some pushback on that from the medical associations, the nursing associations, just unless it changes really substantially every couple of years. I think people are going to feel like it's a hoop to jump through rather than a meaningful exercise. So, I just, before we plunge ahead with that, I think getting allies on board.
We talked about that at the December meeting, and there was discussion about when the best timing was to engage folks. Jason, I think you had some comments on that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just going to say that is part of the discussions we're having at OHA. We want to propose bills that have a good chance of passing, and stakeholder engagement is part of that. And our government relations team will be doing that, and they may reach out to the Pain Management Commission for support in that process, making sure the requirements are reasonable and meaningful. We don't want. I don't think anybody wants to create a hoop that just annoys people and doesn't add value. And certainly don't want to propose something that will just get voted down. I know there was a past proposal to require I think the full 7 hours every 2 or 3 years, and that did not get far for the reasons you're mentioning. So that will be part of the discussion, and these elements that we're talking about today, those are in it now. It may change over time between now and the new session.
This is Kevin Cuccaro, and that was a pretty involved discussion, and this is where that communication between OHA and the Commission becomes really important, because it was recommended, if I'm remembering, is that Commission members not reach out and do that sort of targeted discussions until OHA said or asked or wanted to do it. And so some of us have been waiting just based on that conversation.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we can't prohibit you from having any discussions, but the idea is to make sure those other stakeholders are getting, having one conversation instead of multiple conversations with potential different messages and confusion. And keeping in mind that, as was said earlier, at the end of the day, a representative could sponsor something independently from this bill if desired.
And another thing that was brought up, just kind of to give another perspective on that potential pushback from the licensing boards and medical and associations, is the idea that it's helpful to hear this more than once and to be reminded of the content. Just like you go through your safety training every year, that's potentially a worthy conversation to have with those bodies. Is to kind of challenge that belief that this should be redundant content. And I can well imagine the conversations, but I would tend to support the idea that a bit of repetition would be wise. So the other thing, just to because we're reviewing what was there, is that we would drop. A big part of the Pain Commission's work at one point was this curriculum review of professional programs, licensing programs, and it was pretty unwieldy, and we really were not well positioned or resourced or supported to be able to do that. So we would like to drop that from our mandate as part of this proposal and bargaining process. That will, I think, make our mission much clearer. So, okay. Anything else on legislative changes update? Okay. Let's go ahead and go to some things involving the community. So moving down on the agenda, we'll have Mark Stevens, who produced the professional module and is working on the app, coming in a little bit later to update us on the patient app. But I think what would be nice would be to do an update on the Oregon Pain Summit and OPAC conference first, so we can have a little further discussion about that. Then we can take a break. Yeah, Bart.
Just for folks on the phone, I did send out an email a minute ago that included the PowerPoint that Mark is going to be presenting and a PDF document that has the mock-ups of the patient-facing module. Just so that way you can follow along there.
See that up.
And I'll need to add that to, I think, the meeting materials that should have been added to the meeting materials. So we'll need to get that posted.
Okay. Great. So maybe Kevin Cuccaro and I can update on the Oregon Pain Summit. Was there anyone else on the commission who was at the Pain Summit? Okay. So people are tired of hearing my voice. Kevin, can you talk a little bit and give a?
Well, I was gonna ask that you would, since you emceed it, so you have sort of the bigger picture thing, and I can add in if there's anything that you want. And I'm also trying to merge lanes. I can see my exit, but it's supposed to take me 25 minutes to get there. So.
Oh, you're on your way. Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the way.
Great. Good. Looking forward to seeing you. Okay, so I'll tee that up. Oregon Pain Summit. This was the third summit that happened. The first, the history of the Pain Summit, Oregon Pain Summit, was it started out as something that happened through Oregon Physical Therapy Association and was housed at OHSU 3 years ago. And I was involved in it. Kevin Kakara was involved in it. I think David Eisen, Ruben Halperin, I think, and Kat Buse. Was anybody else involved in that first one that I'm not remembering from the commission? And so that was a really exciting beginning of really having a conference that just focused on pain issues, that wasn't subsumed by the discussion about opioids that happens at the bigger OPAC conference. And then last year and this year it's happened in Lebanon at this beautiful conference facility that exists down there and has been there for about 3 or 4 years. There's a hotel there and a conference center there, and it's right across from the hospital. There's a medical center there, medical school, that's been around for just a few years. And this last year, there was the first year, the theme focused on the 5 key domains of best practice pain care as spelled out by the Oregon Pain Commission. There was a really nice job of kind of aligning with that community resource. And this year, the theme was really about pain and its relationship to trauma. And it was 2 days of full conference, no breakout sessions during those 2 days. Everybody in the room together. There were about 185 participants. People came from different parts of the country. It was mostly Oregon, but there were people from Michigan and Texas and Colorado. And a full with Sharna Prasad, who's a physical therapist down there and a total powerhouse. Her vision and leadership, and Veronica Morosi, physical therapist, and Leanne Deitch, who's now moved to Salem but is a social worker. I cannot say enough how impressed I am with the transformation that's happening in that community and the model it gives, especially for small communities, for rural communities. I think the fact that it's a small community has allowed the ripples to be felt more, and it's taken some depth. There's groups that have been meeting for a couple of years now, and they now have peer groups that meet on their own. So there was a lot of opportunity to showcase that work, as well as clinicians who work closely with pain and trauma. And so that's kind of the high point and highlight of the sessions. And Kevin, what would you like to add to that?
Well, thanks for all the nice words. It is. It was
Kevin
really
keynoted and he kicked butt. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a very special conference, and obviously I have bias because I was involved with it, but to see the transformation that occurs and the volunteers that were helping and facilitating and taking registration, all of them were people who had gone through our local pain programs, and so it was really special to see them who are now interested, who have really just had. I hate to use the word transformation because it just seems so, hyperbolic, but it was just amazing, and
the right word.
It was wonderful, and if anybody wants to see a pain conference that people are like, so it's an emotional roller coaster, but in a good way, where you start seeing clinicians talk to each other in a way like, how can we do more, and how can we change this, and how can we start helping people more? I would really, really recommend attending. It was absolutely amazing. And that all being said, that's all Sharna, Veronica, and the organizers. They did a phenomenal job. I mean, just amazing job on how they organized that, and they curated the content. So it was an absolute privilege to be there.
I agree. And it was unsupported. It was all volunteer time. So that needs to not happen again. They need to have a project manager to support that. So, I think that maybe, something that we can look at for next year is how the Pain Commission can...
You should not be doing that, Nora.
Some way to support support
That's bias.
the Pain
You're a
Summit
government
getting
commission.
the funding it needs to not completely exhaust its
You're a personal
organization.
commission.
Because I think that's a real gift to the community.
Oh my gosh. Just insane.
Yeah, and the other one other thing that I want to say about the Pain Summit was it was the people with lived experience who've gone through the group sessions that are happening in Lebanon and that other folks do in different parts of the state. One of the things that's been so great in the Lebanon Corvallis area is that there's this program where clinicians, there's I think it's a monthly program, Kevin?
Are you talking about the community talks?
Yeah.
Yes, so that's a monthly program that rotates through the different communities, Corvallis, Albany, Lebanon, and Sweet Home. There's a clinician presenter who talks about up-to-date pain science, and then there is a community member with lived experience who provides their perspective and their experience going through some of our local programs. And we just had one last night, and it's very similar. It's a very different discussion, very different dynamic, but really empowering and very hopeful. That's really focuses on change and how people are getting better, and that's been another kind of fun thing to do, just making sure you're hitting each of those pockets in the community. But again, it's client and clinician led, so we're doing kind of co-presentations.
And I think that has, it seems like that has allowed ongoing reinforcement of those changes in the community, and for the community to form a community. Basically, I've been so struck by, the impact of that recovery model and seeing it alive in this new iteration of pain science.
Wow, it's discriminatory against disabilities.
So the opioid pain so actually, let me just pause for a second. Any other questions or comments on the Pain Summit? So maybe we can have a kind of ongoing on our radar 2020 project ideas is just tracking how we can support the Pain Summit. Actually, this kind of segues into talking about the OPAD conference, because these are two state conferences that are happening, and the commission doesn't have a formal relationship to either of them at this time. And I think that is not great. I think maybe we could just talk about that for a moment. I feel like if we are a state pain commission, and we're the only state that has a pain commission, we have these exciting conferences that happen. It seems appropriate that that the Pain Commission would be directly connected, so we know what's going on and we can support it, and we're all aligned. Like that, making sure, for example, at the OPAD conference, that I was just thinking about this morning, that the clinician module and soon the patient app be showcased. I mean, last year it was not adequately showcased. I was not pleased. It needs to be presented multiple times from the plenary podium. We had flyers there, but it was sidelined in terms of the content. Again, the kind of opioids take the oxygen out of the room. And in terms of the Oregon Pain Summit, I mean, that's something that, is not formally a state conference. So, folks can do what they want to do, and I know that there's different kind of models to use, but we do have this unifying clinician module and patient content that I would like to see us kind of feature strongly at those two formats. So that's my thinking. I don't know what other, and so in the case of the Oregon Pain Summit, I guess that would be a conversation to have with the organizers. Is this a state conference? If it is a state conference, then it seems that it would need to directly connect to the Pain Commission. If it's not a state conference, then then with OPAT, it is being called a state conference. So and it's sponsored by Oregon Health Authority. And I feel like that's really essential. What do other folks think about that idea?
I agree with Kevin Kukaro.
Has anyone from the Pain Commission been asked to serve on the OPAC conference committee yet?
Not this year.
Okay.
That I know of. Anyone else? And last year I was very involved, and I have not been approached yet. Anybody else? So,
The Pain Commission, there's been members of the Pain Commission that have been on those conference committees kind of randomly. Yes, randomly. So it would be nice to have a real strong voice.
And I'm actually thinking there's a steering committee.
Yes.
And the Pain Commission, we should have representation in the steering committee. And if there's other representation in other planning committee parts, then that's fine. But that could be more random, and then there would be a formal standing position on steering. Kevin Kukaro, in terms of the Pain Summit, what do you think about that? I mean, I don't want to be kind of honing in on something grassroots that's happening in Lebanon. What do you think about the idea of, like, is this a state conference, and if it is, having a more formal relationship between the Pain Commission and the planning?
Again, though, I want to kind of reiterate that I'm not on the planning. I'm sort of I understand. On the side. Okay, so I'm not a direct organizer or anything. I think that would be a useful discussion to have. I guess the one concern is there is a power in kind of keeping that environment. So I can't see that particular conference moving from Lebanon. And if it was a state conference, then you start getting the questions of whether you need to rotate locations and things like that. So that would be me as an outside observer kind of thing. But I think it's a useful discussion. At a minimum, I think it's useful just to talk about making sure that the commission is involved with these things. Obviously, this has been in an informal way. That summit has taken the clinician module and continues to design around. Even this year, while the overall theme was trauma, there was an active work to kind of make sure that these domains were as incorporated in that trauma conversation as possible, given the limitations on speakers as well. So you still had a pain-focused one, you still had a behavior or a mood-focused one, you still had the nutrition one became more of a workshop thing, but having a more kind of formal relationship there, I think, would be good, just to kind of keep that consistent and congruent, so that the state is speaking the same language and still covering the same 5 domains. Still, there's different resources, but making sure that core really is around the pain module and toolkit, because that's widely available, it's funded, and we should use it.
So I'd like to propose a small action item, Kevin, that maybe you and I and Sharna have a conversation about this. It can just sort of feel that out, see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, like an initial first step.
On the OPAT side, there are plans for the OPAT conference, so opioid pain and addiction treatment. That's a huge conference now. It's like more than 400 people.
450.
Yeah, and it's become more even regional beyond the state of Oregon. It's really Oregon and Washington, a little bit California. But there's definitely an OHA sponsorship present. So
there's a lack of pain. There's not a pain track in it.
Right.
If that Pain Commission could support that, if we wanted to do our own subcommittee and have some planning around that and working with their steering committee, maybe that's how we get that done. This is Michelle. Sorry. Because otherwise they won't do it.
In my experience, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and this is Kevin Scargan, and I just that I think is really important. In particular, if you're going to have a state conference and you're going to have pain in the title, then you need to have a pain track in it. And so I was just kind of reinforce what Michelle said that I think it's needed, and it's something I would definitely help with if that was an interest of the commission, because I think that's important.
Yeah. So, and I think a place to start is with that idea of, and Mark, we haven't taken a break yet, so we're going on. I think a place to start is to say, we need to be on the steering committee, and I would agree with, I would concur with what Kevin and Michelle both said. Each year, it seems like the idea is, well, there's so much we need to do around opioids, and pain continues to get scuttled to the side, and I'm ready to say enough already. Okay, that's been quite a few years that's gone on, and there needs to be a far more robust presence, and not just in breakout sessions. So I will take on as a next step figuring out who, because I don't even know who. I think Lines for Life is leading it up, but I don't know that Dwight. Yeah, Dwight. So I will take that on to connect with, but really it's Lisa Shields. It's not like Lines for Life runs the conference. Lines for Life is contracted to put on the conference. And there's a challenge because Lines for Life is dealing with drug overdose, so their full focus is on drug overdose, not on pain. Kevin, would you like to maybe be in on a conversation maybe with Dwight and Lisa Shields, just to kind of talk about this topic?
If you want me there, I will be there.
Well, let me just feel things out a little bit, and I'll send an email out to all the commissioners about kind of where we feel, where that lands and what next steps are, and if people want to be involved in the conversation. We'll just start with that, I think. I think that's a good place to land the plane. Because at this point, I don't know. It's a little late to be planning a conference, but anyway. Okay. I think that anything else on the OPAT conference update that, like, Michelle, I'm looking at you.
I think that this is a good time to get involved because they just got the funding for it. They're just planning it. If we can kind of stick our foot in the door and push our way in.
I remember. I actually have a thought, and I was talking with Michelle about this, that could we leverage this new certification of pain specialty peer support people and find a way of using the content from the clinician module and the patient app to train peer support folks in teaching this content at community forums around the state, which gets to champions, creating more championship and more of that deeper culture change in rural areas like Eastern Oregon. That we, could we actually bring in and pay scholarships for somehow through the funding from Lines for Life, or maybe even from the existing OPMC coffers, which we are sitting on a little bit of money, pay for some folks to come from the different counties around the state to become peer support trained.
Yes, and use it as hopefully it will align time-wise that we can launch that training at the conference. That would be, everyone at the conference would know what this is, and the peers could do their own training, and the providers could watch the training, part of it.
My vision is that if we had peer support specialists who were trained in pain, they could be paired with a clinician dyad partner in that region, in that county, where they can support each other. And we've done several county forums now, so there actually is a curriculum, and we could hand them a Candace Dog and Pony show made up of the content from the Pain Commission, ready to go. So maybe I'd like if we could just take a second to take the pulse of the group and see how people feel about that. And I'm seeing Mark maybe wanting to say something.
Well, I think we need to move to a break.
Well, we need to move to a break. Yes, we do. But we're also ahead.
No, we're.
No, I know, but we just covered two topics
From
from
we come back.
the next portion. Oh, you mean just take a break because people are sick of hearing me talk? Okay. Okay. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back to that topic at the very end. How about that?
I can't come back after the break.
Kim?
Yeah, I've got to hang up during the break. But thank you for letting me participate in the first part.
Thank you, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to put the phone on mute here for during the break.
Actually, I'm sorry, there are mechanisms within the CCOs. I mean, at Quest, we're just dealing with Medicaid population. And I know that there's an issue around commercial insurance versus publicly funded insurance, but at least in the Oregon Health plan world with CCO and CCO point 2, there are mechanisms to do this, and you can get pretty creative with them. But it needs to be attached to programs. So, and I'd be more than happy offline if anybody wants information on that. Use me as a resource because we do that extensively.
Thank you so much, David. I'm just wondering about also, for commercial insurance too, and for, peers working with this population, that it is a poor reimbursement and it is difficult to actually have peers in a sustainable environment clinically also. So there might be a section of the pain commission stepping in to be able to work with that, especially in the arena that we're entering into. I'm hearing that maybe this might be a specific topic for the agenda for next meeting. And Michelle, maybe I'll ask you, and maybe you could tap David, especially as this new specialty gets moving a little bit, if you could identify some specific things that would be helpful for us to be involved with. Yep. Like, so that you can identify, this is where we can actually be useful. Yes. That's great. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and open up the next portion. So on our agenda, we're in the community portion. We already discussed the Pain Summit and the OPAD conference, and now we're doing the update on the patient-facing pain module. So I will open this up and then introduce our guest speaker, Mark Stevens, with Mark Stevens. So Mark Stevens is the person who produced our clinician module. And we did some filming yesterday with a couple of other people from the commission. Ruben Halpern was there. Michelle Maricos was there, as well as a couple of other clinician experts and patients. And we had a fantastic day of shooting patient stories and portions of what will become a patient app. And I'm very excited about this project. It's going to align with the key domains of the clinician module. We will eventually this is up to the commission to decide, but it would make sense, I think, to have our next update of the module include weaving back in the more updated content from this app into the clinician module, so it's all a seamless whole. One of the things that we've done with each of the domains in the app is to weave in the pain science into the discussion about the behavioral changes that can happen for a person in the domains of sleep, mood, activity, etc. I think we have some fantastic footage and the basis for a really good product. Before I hand it over to Mark, Michelle and Ruben, since you were also there, do you have any brief comments that you'd like to share with us? It was a wonderful experience. The shooting went really well, and we're just excited about the future of this module and what's going to happen with it, and that it's going to be new and fresh, and really, I think it's going to be much more succinct than we had before. Ruben, any comments from you? Oh, maybe Ruben's not back yet. Okay. Great. So let me go ahead and introduce Mark Stevens. Let me also just say that Kevin popped in. Hi, Kevin. The dollar short. So Mark Stevens is producer of a lot of different products involving the pain and opioid arena, and produced our Changing the Conversation About Pain online clinician module, and has been a tremendous partner in this work. And I just want to express my thanks to Mark for his incredible persistence and thoroughness in getting a very big project through to completion, and for some really expert coaching of patients to get them to kind of tell their best story in the best way possible, and to really cover a lot of ground, a lot of different ways that you hold a project like this. So I really appreciate your work in this world. So take it away, Mark.
Wow. Can I just say thanks with that introduction? Where do I go from here? So I just want to check in with folks because when I was putting this presentation together, I noticed that I was here September 12th, and we talked about the patient education module, and so I used some of the same slides and just kind of updated it. So I just wanted to check if those people on the phone, who was at that September 12th presentation? Just quickly, just
roll call from the phone.
I was.
I was not. Okay. I was not. Okay, I'll assume largely people were not there then.
I'd say maybe 50-50.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. So at that, we had a discussion about where we were with the patient education module, and you may remember that we said there were some areas where we didn't have sufficient expertise, and we reached out to members on the commission to help out. And as it turned out, that actually occurred. So let's go ahead and run the presentation here, just so I can at least talk through the slide changes. Okay, right. So we're on the title. So next page, agenda. So I'm going to cover patient education module largely, and as Nora referred to, the professional course update recommendations. And then time for, hopefully, a fair amount of time for Q&A. Okay, let's move on. So next slide, background. So really the background of the patient education module was really the professional course. So thanks to Kat and Nora and Denise for providing outstanding content in that course, it's been very, very successful. So there's been over 15,000 clinicians in the state who have gone through it since February 18th. So we're on 2 years now, in the 2 years. And there's about 1,000 patients, not quite 1,000 patients a month, every month going through it. So it's affecting a lot of the clinicians. But it's in the module, it endorses lifestyle changes and conversations, things that you can use to help convince patients to undertake those lifestyle changes. And so you can see here, 70% of the people plan to change their treatment approach. That's pretty huge. When you're hitting 15,000 clinicians and 70% of them say they're going to change their treatment approach, you really affected a lot of people. Okay. So it's been an outstanding course. So that really led the state to fund the patient education module, which is kind of submerged the patient education materials that we had before, but had some sort of automation thing. So next slide. So we're on
Slide 4.
slide 4. So patient education module overview. 3 features. Patient education, I'll say more about that in a moment. Tracking, I'm going to show mock-ups of the app screen. And then part of the patient education module concept is that the clinic and the patient are working together on somewhat like a weekly basis, at least during an initial period. Okay, so we're on the next slide. Okay, so can you open up then the PDF that was sent out to folks?
So this is a PDF, folks. The title of it is OHA Pain App 317. PDF that says, hello, welcome to your health coach. Folks have that?
You got it. And
Great.
then every time it's down. Okay, think so. Okay. All right, so the first slide is kind of what is the branding of the app. And it is developed by you folks, the Oregon Pain Management Commission. A big chunk of this is Nora Stern, but Kat, Ruben, Michelle here. So several of the members on the commission have contributed to the content here. Okay, and then it's been funded by OHA through a grant. Okay, next.
Well, and then there's, just to give some context as well, there's a question about the logos and kind of branding and liability. OHA needs to determine how to sort of embrace this in terms from a liability perspective, right? That's still an open discussion and outside of our hands, right? Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, moving on. So on this slide, the second slide here, the first slide, you'll see clinic code. So each clinic that would be using the patient education app has their own code. So that it's their own private set of the clinicians and patient relationship. But this is exchanging PHI information with the patients. So they have to sort of be protected to log into their clinics. Does that make sense? Okay, so assuming that they log in then, the next screen they see is the clinic. So we give each clinic its own sort of space. And this is intentional because it creates ownership with the clinic. The clinic says, this is my app. And so that helps encourage them to use this app because they have some ownership. And so we encourage them to maybe have a short video of their clinic and other resources that they might offer the patient. And then the next screen would be, as they're using it, obviously they have to go through a disclosure statement, and then next. And so then they enter in their name, email address, mobile phone. This is patient health information, so it's protected information. So we are collecting PHI.
Mark, I have a clarification question.
Yeah.
That clinic code, does that mean if you don't have a clinic code, you can't use the app?
Correct.
So the patient can't use the app without a clinic code?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, at this point. At this point.
Will there be a future version just for patients? Community members.
Hold on to that question. It's a very important question. Hold on to that, and we'll return to that. Okay? Go with me in terms of this being a tool which is only connected between a clinic tool, a clinic-patient partnership tool. Okay, that's the concept here. Okay, so next. So with any sort of app, and I think I probably have every major chronic pain education app that is available on the internet. So I have done that sort of research of what else exists out there. And great difficulty with apps is they're overly complex. It's hard to use, people can't navigate them well, etc. And that becomes an impediment for any sort of tool that you want people to use regularly. It's got to be super simple, easy to explain. And so we're we're coming up with a concept here. These are still not final screens, but this is the direction I'm heading. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. So let's go to 1. So the first step is that they educate themselves about what is pain. So understanding pain, how it works, how our brain becomes sensitized, and things accumulate wired together, and we're going to see a little bit of that on the video.
So we're now on slide 6 and moving up to slide 6.
Yeah. So the second would be, right there. Let's see, please. Yes. Okay. So then they choose which topic. So having gained some understanding of what pain is and how it works and how our brain and body interact, then they choose which topics they would like to work on. And they can work with the clinic to say, the clinic may say, we really think that you might try to get more activity in your life. Or, you seem to be pretty isolated. Let's work on maybe being more social. Or, I know you have flare-ups or so you offer the patient a series of topics which hopefully they're going to be interested on 2 or 3 kind of lifestyle improvements.
I'm going to interject here. In addition to the clinicians making recommendations, I would say even more importantly, it's an opportunity for the patient to make choices based on motivational concepts.
Absolutely. It's patient's choice. Ultimately, it's patient's choice. Okay, next. So then having had the patient choose 1 or 2 topics to work on, say sleep, for example, then it's for them to come up with short-term goals. Okay, if you're going to work on sleep, what's your plan? Come up with a short-term goal and then start tracking. So we're really trying to form a partnership between the patient and the clinic, working on a weekly basis for improvement. Okay, next.
Wait. So you're expecting somebody who is not in a program, who's been oriented to this app, to come up with goals on their own?
No, not necessarily. It can be either on their own or in partnership with the clinic. The app doesn't force it one way or another, right? What the app is encouraging is that the patient somehow identify what their goals are in an area that they choose to work on. Is that clear?
Right, but the mechanization, the actual happening of that takes time and effort on the clinic's part to help somebody feel empowered to do that and to maintain doing that.
Can you hold that question until we get past the demos, and then you can ask that question again? Because I think that will answer your question, okay? Rather than me try to explain it here. It will be covered in the demos, okay?
Sure.
All right, so let's move forward here. So then 3 is to track your goal. So I'm going to go through these. Go through the next one here. Okay, so having the patient gone through the first couple of screens, then the next thing they do is they watch a video. As soon as they've logged in, the very first thing they come across is this 9-minute video. And so we sent the link out. Okay, can I hear, just before we run it here, who has seen the video? If everybody says, we've seen it, then we won't bother to run it. If most people have not, then we'll run the video now for the whole group.
Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, so it's 9 minutes, folks, but it's worth listening to the 9 minutes that we spent $25,000 putting together these 9 minutes, and I hope it's worthwhile. So let's see what we came up with.
So they have to be able to see this on there. You would have to run it separately.
So people are not?
They're not, no. This is not video. No. It's not.
So what people can do,
we can have everybody and synchronize.
Yeah.
Click on the link and watch it.
Yeah. If you're not at a computer, then just listen with us. If you're at a computer, mute your phone and watch it, I would say.
Right, exactly. So we'll give everybody kind of 10 minutes. We'll run it here, and everybody else has kind of 10 minutes to watch it. But my assumption going forward is that every everyone has watched this video. Okay? Are we clear?
Yeah.
10 minutes from now, I'll return, and assuming everybody's watched the video, and we'll watch a version here. Okay, let's go.
Hi there. I'm Nora Stern. I'm a pain educator and physical therapist. I've been for physical pain for about 25 years, and I'm glad to welcome you to this module on rethink pain. We'll look at why pain can linger and why it's been misunderstood for so many years. And we have some good news. Everyone thinks that you can think about to change your pain and decide where to start.
There we go.
So first, let's talk about your pain experience. For example, have you ever had pain that lasted way beyond normal healing? Or pain that spread, moved around, feels like it's bigger? Let's talk about your pain sometimes increase with stress. When you're on vacation or having a really good time, do you find that your pain doesn't bother you as much? That's very common. Has pain often kept you from sometimes increases?
Wow.
You may have had many tests this time, but nothing seems to explain the time. Do you find that your pain doesn't bother you? Medication might help. Also, has pain often kept you from getting a good night's sleep? You may have had many tests that were done, but nothing seems to explain the pain that you have. Medication might help some, but doesn't completely take the pain away. You may have tried injections or surgery, but your pain returns and gets worse. You may even have gotten the sense that people don't think your pain is real. These are very common experiences for people who struggle with chronic pain. And we now know a lot more about pain than we have in the past. For over 400 years, we misunderstood pain, and now we have a better understanding about the various causes of pain and some of the new approaches to help you deal with pain.
Nope.
So let me first say your pain is very real. Let's talk about why we have pain. Pain is designed to protect us, to warn us that we need to pay attention to something that might be harming us. And we know that pain is not only the result of something that happens in the body. Pain is actually produced in the brain, which helps to explain some of pain's complexity. And it also helps us understand how pain can change. Many things can make pain worse, or some of the things that affect pain. So as an example, let's look at what happens when you have an injury stage unit. A message gets sent up to the brain that something happens to your knee that might need your attention. But it's not actually pain yet. The brain has to take that information and make sense out of it. So actually the brain has a big role in how much pain you experience. In addition to bodily injury, many things can influence how much pain you experience. So for example, pain and stress work together to help us respond to emergencies.
Oh
We
my.
actually say nerves that fire together, wire together.
Oh
The
my
brain
God.
becomes better over time at creating pain. It actually learns pain.
So
So the
bad.
good news is that the brain can also unlearn pain because the brain can change. The more we understand pain, the more hopeful we become about our ability to change things. We can quiet our stress. We're
Witchcraft.
also quieting the emergency response system in the brain, which can
Unacceptable.
then we have less fear of re-injury, and we start to feel like we can get back into action. We start to do more things that we enjoy. And those parts of the brain that have been busy producing pain get busy doing other things. This is a process of changing habits, activities, feelings, and thoughts that actually changes pain itself by rewiring the brain and quieting. And you can do it all yourself. So, let's answer some questions together. Based on what we just talked about, do you think if you have a bad x-ray, does that mean that you will definitively have bad pain? It turns out that those things are not necessarily connected. You can have pretty awful x-rays with not a lot of pain. And you can have pretty good x-rays and have terrible pain. The picture doesn't tell the whole story. What about medication? Is medication the only thing that can help you with your pain? We now know that many things can change pain, and while medication can be helpful, it's only one part of a good pain care plan. This module can help you slowly make changes to get back to the things that are important in your life and start doing the journey of quieting and unlearning pain. It helps to start with the things that are most important to you. So let's consider for a moment what your own priorities might be, so it's easier to decide where to start. For sleep, you notice that your pain gets worse when your sleep is worse. Poor sleep is a big contributor to pain for a lot of people, and poor sleep means that we don't get time for our bodies to reset from the day, and that stress on the body can build up and increase the pain. So this can be a great place to start. What about pain that changes with stress? Gets better when you're having fun. Pain can often have a lot to do with stress because
So
the stress
dismissive.
response and the pain response are both part of the emergency response system inside of us. So it's really common for those things to go together. And we can change it. Have you found that you're doing less and less avoiding activities because you're afraid of pain? We can help you with gradually getting back to action. What about pain that spreads, moves around, feels like it gets bigger? Pain can change and spread when you move less and less. This is one of the things that you can improve a great deal as you slowly get back to activity. When you're wondering if your eating habits might not be as great as they could be, foods that have low nutritional values affect pain like kind of like pouring gasoline on a fire. And healthier foods are like water on the fire. So, that's what we want to help you with. All the things that you can do to change your pain. Like your sleep, your mood, thoughts and feelings, how much you're moving, the food that you eat, and how you think about pain and how it works. Because these are things that you can change. We learned a bit more about how pain works and some of the key things that are most effective in changing this.
getting back to your life. Oh.
What do you think, Jill?
That was so amazing. Hold on, let's get everybody back in. I'm having an aha moment of the languaging. Hold on just a second. I want to make sure everybody's back. Is everybody back from watching that? Can we just get
Yep.
here?
Yep. Yes.
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 Awesome. That worked fairly well considering the pandemonium we had at the beginning. Great. Okay, go ahead, Michelle. So the languaging throughout this first video follows the rest of the videos, and you had said that, but I wasn't tracking it. And really, when we did all of our videos yesterday, we used the same languaging throughout every video, and it really, that's amazing. Good job.
Yeah.
Did a lot of work.
Yeah. So, okay, can we go back to the app here? Okay, so you just watched that 10 minutes, you just watched the video that all the patients will see. So can I really I'd like a reaction feedback, if you would please, of everybody who's watched the video, kind of one after another. Just please give us your feedback. Yay, nay, comments, observations. Very helpful to us at this point. You can see we spent a lot of money doing this. So what's your verdict?
I think it's great, frankly. I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
David Eisen, I think, Nora, you're extremely believable, and it feels like you care. I think not having all white, little, wonderfully built people as in the sleep thing and in the pain thing is great. To that, would this be available in other languages would be a side question, but I think it was, and the languaging, I think, Michelle, you said it before, is excellent, it's clear, it's succinct.
The languages, Mark, we've discussed that. Let's park that thought.
Yeah, let's keep going, guys. Here.
That's certainly something that that's on our radar. Go ahead. Others? Alyssa, Shad, Michelle.
Yeah, I also think that was great.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm not sure about the acute application, but I think it'll be interesting to explore that. So
That's a good conversation to have. Yeah.
Other people?
This is Anthony. No, I thought it was really great.
Okay, so it sounds like people are liking it. So this is the intro that people would then move on to the different topics from there.
Right.
Yeah.
So imagine that your patient, say you're primary care. I know you're not all providers here, but say that was your patient and they just went through that 90-minute video. Okay. We are hoping with this investment that they are at least thoughtful about, maybe there's some things I can do to change my life which are going to make things better for me. Right? So that's our hope. So that's why when we invested that much money, and I tell you, it's the thing which is incredibly expensive is the animation. Very, very expensive programming. You can see how finely tuned things are, etc. So very expensive to produce this. But we hope it'll be impactful. So having gone through that, if we go to the next slide here, and then you'll see, so the whole app is narrated. Every place they go, there's narration in the background. We don't have that done at this point. But imagine you come to this screen and the app is talking to you to say, now that you've done that, please make a choice of one or two things you'd like to explore. Okay? So let's say they're motivated to click on sleep. So they could click some of these things or none of these things or etc. They're completely free to choose what they want to do. So
narrated by Nora? That doesn't even clear it with the commission before they record it?
These are sort of temporary screens. We're kind of getting closer and closer to a final user interface, but we're not there yet. So we would say, learn about sleep. sleep, so that would be a sleep video, and then track your sleep, and then there's other sleep resources. So if they click on learn to sleep, they would see a video on sleep, and that's what we did yesterday. I'll say more about that. If they click on track your sleep, then they see these lists of goals here. So what is my sleep goal, my short-term sleep goal, and then what steps will I take to achieve this goal?
So you can see that people can add their own steps, and then they can update after they've achieved one short-term goal. They can move to another one,
right,
and then track it.
But prior to them getting to this checklist, they will have watched a 10-minute video on sleep. Okay, and that 10-minute video will educate them all about sleep and things they can do to improve their sleep, getting routines into their life, being careful about what food they eat, etc., etc. A whole list of things that they can do to improve their sleep. Because as I think most of us know, all of us know, improving sleep is a major contributor to helping people with chronic pain. So they then choose their sleep, and so they pick on some things. If we just click through here, I don't want to pick too much.
And I just want to say, too, that each of the topic videos has expert content and then patients with lived experience.
Yeah. So, okay, so then they pick a few things. They can say, oh, I want to get my dog to sleep in his own bed, etc. They add that as a goal, etc. So then they go, and then they start tracking it. So let's say then the next screen, if you're following, as you track through, here they're tracking sleep. They have a couple of days of good sleep. Next
ridiculous.
They then can journal something. So as they're going through, we want to have a journal entry. So each day, if they want to, they can journal something about how their sleep is going. Next. And that's their note.
Just a second.
And here we're using the PEG scale for pain. So they're tracking their pain. And let's say this individual says, I'm tracking my pain, my sleep, activity, and social. And here's how I'm doing. So that would be what they see in a week.
And the pain scale, again, is pain, enjoyment of life, and general activity conglomerate.
Let me stop there. So that's the patient. So you get an idea of where we are in terms of the user interface and kind of where we're heading. Can I get some feedback at this point?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there going to be app tracking? So, through the clinics, will you know what sections are the most popular that people are using on the app?
Yes. Not necessarily the clinic, but we will centrally. We will instrument the app so that we know which videos they watch, how long they watched, etc. So we know which parts of the app the user is using. We collect that information. Okay? Other feedback? A couple more things before I move on. Any other feedback on the app, kind of user interface, the functionality?
I think for me, the difficulty in providing feedback per se is kind of go back to my first question is recognizing how this app would be utilized. Because the way it seemed to be presented so far, this is really clinically the clinic tool.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the key audience to be involved and engaged in utilizing this app then becomes the clinicians.
Not quite.
Okay.
I would say it's. Let me say a little bit more. Let's go. Okay, fair point, but we're going to address that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. It's difficult to provide feedback because if you're looking at more of a patient-centered app, so versus a tool that will be worked hand in hand with a clinician, it's sort of that's a different.
It is. It is a very different construction of the app. 100% agree with that. The difficulty with having a sort of a free app where the patient can do whatever they want is what keeps them using it. The vast majority of patients who start with these apps use it for a week or two and then stop.
So
So they don't continue.
That's what I'm just trying to be clear on. So this is a clinician.
It's a partnership.
Okay, but it would be something that would basically be almost prescribed through a clinic for people to use.
We don't know yet. Okay, so the theory is here's the operating theory is that if you develop a patient education app and you motivate the patient to start working on some areas, and you involve the clinic so that the clinic is encouraging the patient, saying, "Attaboy, Sue, you got 3 good nights of sleep," or "Joe, you've got 5 days of sort of walking 15 minutes a day. That's fantastic." If the clinic is connecting and motivating the individual and vice versa, we feel that partnership will cause improvement.
Yeah, I'm not. I totally get that. But I'm trying to figure out how you access the app because
through the clinic.
So just like the clinic is going to be prescribing the app.
Yes. Okay. It's part of their treatment.
Okay.
It's a treatment. So it is a clinical tool, absolutely. Once the patient starts using it, we hope there's enough breadth of material and tools that they will investigate on their own the other parts of it. Okay? But the introduction and the connection, and there's sort of a mutual commitment. The clinic commits they're going to help track the patient. The patient connects to the clinic. I'm going to work on this for improvement. So it's like a contract. So we're connecting it at the hip to the system. It's the premise. Because the freestanding apps don't work. They don't work. Doctor can prescribe any of the fantastic best apps, but I will tell you, the uptake is down in the single digits. Where if you have a clinical tool and you pre-select, you're going to pre-select your patient. So the clinic will go in there and say, "This patient seems like they're sort of ready to change, etc."
They're ready to
I
change.
think they might be motivated. They're app savvy. Sue, why don't you try this out? See how it works. Let's talk about things that we've been wanting to have you get more exercise. Look at this app and see what the recommendations are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just,
but it's a theory.
But also implies, how you roll it out,
Yeah,
how you distribute it, how you educate, who your key target market is that you're going to find to start with.
You go into the clinic. So the introduction of it is you go to the clinic and you talk to the clinic as a whole. It's all hands on deck. Here's an app. Here's what we're trying to do for chronic pain patients. Which of your pain might have done, etc.
And critical for the success of the app then is clinical education.
Yeah,
it's going to be the
Okay.
And I want to get back to David Eisen's concern about the idea that the goals are something that's built up over the time with the clinic, if that is the way that clinic operates. And David, if that's the case, to me, I think there's an opportunity to go ahead and use the app that way.
Sure, absolutely. But having been doing this quite a long time, we see that if people are trying to do this on their own, no matter what the app, no matter what the intervention, if it's solo, the likelihood of that lifestyle change behavior occurring is minimal. So my concern is... Finish. So I think it's imperative that, as I think it was Kevin talked about clinical education, that we put into the marketing piece the fact that the clinic has to buy into providing some sort of structure and resource to creating that functional community for this to be as successful as I think it could be.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just agreeing with you profusely. Absolutely. Agree with everything that you say. So the rollout of this with the clinic is critical to its success because it's this partnership. So you're asking the clinic to kind of change our behavior a bit, right? So the request I make to the clinic is I say, first of all, you have to brief everybody on the app. You've got to be knowledgeable about it, right? It's kind of your clinic app. It's got your face here. Your team is going to have pictures on the front of the app. It's your app for your patients, right? So you want them to have ownership of that. And then you want them to succeed for sure. So we want them to roll it out slowly. Take 10 patients, say, that you try it with. We're in the field trial stage. This has not been done before, so we're kind of taking it step by step, and the first step is to have a few clinics try it in a field trial format. But the other thing we're sensitive to, what about reimbursement? And so the follow-up, our recommendations that the clinics pick somebody in the clinic who touches all the patients that they're using in the field trial. And that person, their touches are billable. They're follow-up consults. There's a billing code for it. In fact, Legacy already uses that billing code for follow-up calls. And so you can go to the clinic and say, here's the things you need to do. You need to allocate a behavioral health person to do the follow-up, and here's the billing codes for it. It's, a moneymaker. So that might be attractive to the clinic. So you have to look at the financial side, too. You go in, you're doing a system change for the clinic in the interest of the behavioral health, the chronic disease model, and you're trying to get the patient hooked in, and you're trying to do it in a much more frequent touch model. Because I don't think... Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I think, if I may, it would be very interesting to see in the beta testing of this and the pilots of it, if you had different clinics have different scopes of people's work be the connecting to the clients that are using it. Have one be an MD, have one be a mentor. I mean, that's what we would use. We would use not medical people, we would use somebody with lived experience who gets paid as it is already, so we don't even need the reimbursement to do it, versus a behaviorist. And I would be intrigued to see who gets the best bang for their buck using the app.
Yes. It's fantastic data for a study. It would be wonderful to have somebody kind of monitoring the field trial to see which of these models works out and why, etc. We don't have the scope or capacity to do that, but if somebody's interested, I'd be happy to have them participate at the study.
It didn't have to be a study. You could do a really informal pre and post on this as each clinic using it, and then just have informal results to sort of like inform your next steps.
Absolutely. So the field trials, I'm cautious we're kind of running out of time now. But let me go through a few more slides, and that will kind of answer people's questions here. So,
great comment.
So as Nora said, if we go to the one which has the chart, the very next one, So we spent all day yesterday filming. Sorry, I'm jerking you around here. Mark, can you go to the previous slide for a second? Yeah. Okay, so these are all the topics we videoed yesterday.
Except activity.
Except activity and understanding pain, which you've already seen. So we nonstop, 8 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, videoed 10-minute sections on each of these topics. Nutrition, we have this fantastic presentation on nutrition. It's going to knock your socks off. I mean, this lady is amazing. She's a bariatric surgeon with the Samaritan. Erica. She's fantastic, this lady. Anyway, it will change your thoughts as a clinician on nutrition. And definitely all of us learn from Erica's presentation. Social, we had Miriam present on social. Kat did mood, sleep, and mood. Michelle here did flare-ups. Ruben did medications. And so we had a whole team yesterday doing these videos, trying to keep the same level of engagement and quality that you saw in Understanding Pain. So this is hugely expensive, guys. So putting this stuff together, the filming day probably cost $10,000 yesterday. So with all the crew, et cetera, it's very expensive to do that. But we kind of feel we have one shot at this, and so we want the quality to be top, so we motivate people in clinics to start working together. And I think the quality hopefully will sell itself. So, Stress is in mood. Stress is a big thing. And I mean, at one point we thought, should we call it stress?
You're the ones that are
but
stressing.
But it really is encompassed definitely within mood. It's actually in many things. So let's see. What else do we go through a couple of slides here? Do this. We did project schedule. So people may be interested in schedule. So I actually brought up the schedule that I had.
So we're on slide 12.
Slide 12. I brought up the schedule that I presented last September 12th. And you'll see all the dates here, if you read quickly or carefully, have slipped nearly 6 months. The reason is that OHA, who, it's certainly likes the projects and the work I did, had a long delay getting the contract to me. There was no problem. It was just, there were a lot of contracts they were doing, and it took them a very long time. And the other thing is Lisa Shields, who's been my paymaster on this, was out sick with some medical surgery, etc. So she was out for several months, and that caused a delay. So we kind of lost nearly 6 months in terms of the programming, but we were able to move ahead on content development because, as you saw, we did this huge filming day yesterday, and that's been months in preparation. So basically, I was spending my own money waiting for the contract from the state, so it was a little stressful at that point. So, okay, I think probably this is a good place to maybe pause, or Mark?
Yeah, this is Mark Alnott. So I think from OHA's perspective and from the commission perspective, one thing we need to keep in mind is our next meeting is April 23rd.
Okay.
So if there's anything that needs to be reviewed, voted on by the commission, submitted to OHA leadership, there's that lead time piece that we need to consider here. I just want to put that out there for the good of the order.
Okay.
So you're aware of that.
Okay. So just elaborate a little bit on the process there. So
I think, for instance, will there be content that needs to be approved by the commission prior to any programming or field testing or any of that?
Okay, so let me answer that directly.
Yes.
The content has been completed as of yesterday. Content is done. Understanding pain is a key part of the content. In terms of the educational content, that's educating pain. That's a whole set of concepts there. And then we just videoed 7 other educational modules, 10 minutes each. So that is the content of the module. It's in those videos. Okay. So it's a little late at this point to be changing that content. However, we had a clinical team with membership from the commission here working on this. And so several people on the commission were writing the content. Ruben Halperin did medications, for example. Kat did sleep nutrition. And so the people writing the content were from the commission. So I'm kind of assuming that the commission kind of approved it as commission members are writing the content.
Being a public process, going to get voted on.
Yeah. Okay. So the videos are baked. So you can vote on it. I'm just saying that's where we're at, Mark. So not to be divisive or whatever, but the content is done at this point.
Let me just interject here, and I want to say that I obviously need to recuse myself from any decision-making process. And this is something that Mark Stevenson and I have talked about, that if this is a commission product, then the commission needs to be involved in the content. And the reality of the production schedule has not really allowed for, a chance to, you can't make a video and then decide on the content of the video after it's made. So there's a challenge there. And I actually don't know how to resolve that.
So just from a pragmatic standpoint, folks, and I'm going to just kind of cut through process. So I'm an old guy, and I've been in professional business for many, many years in a lot of different organizations. So you get to a point where we just need to be pragmatic about it. The quality of the content is outstanding. standing guide.
Jesus.
So,
sorry.
and we believe that it will motivate patients.
Not biased at all.
And that's really what we should be focusing on here. Okay. So,
can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Because I think this may maybe kind of negate this. Realistically, what the commission stands as an advisory role when it comes to the staff at this time. We are not providing the funding for it. This is an OHA-funded option. And so what you have done is you've invited us as advisement. It seems like more than anything.
Yeah.
And so
and contributors.
The reason that becomes important, because we're not the ones who contracted this. So when it comes to voting on content per se, I don't necessarily think that's our place from a pragmatic standpoint. Because if that becomes an issue, then that will bog down how this app gets developed, which is already in the process of doing so. And so I was trying to avoid that. Since we're not involved in the contract, we're not providing the funding, we're basically advisors. Honestly, if we're doing a vote, and I think having input is wonderful, but we shouldn't be delaying the process per se. I feel appreciative that you're here, that Nora, that you've been part of this, but I also want to make sure that we're not somehow facilitating the process rather than stopping this process with protocol. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so let me just interject here. I appreciate that kind of revisioning. Thank you, Kevin. And I think what that speaks to is actually the opening screen and what, and we'll wrap this up in just a second. What the opening screen says, so that, and we can talk about this and maybe talk about it with Jason and Mark Altenhofen, so that it doesn't say produced by Pain Commission, right? It could say contribution to the Pain Commission.
Yeah.
But what we really need is we need a tool. We have a good tool in the work, and what I would hate to see is a bunch of the process interrupt with that, because we need resources, and this is we need to focus on what the overall mission is rather than
Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. So we need to wrap up in 1 minute.
Okay, so let's go to the last slide. Let's see, next to the last slide. Okay, so right here, just so having seen what we're having in the works and under development in the patient education module, the way of disseminating that information is to go back to the professional course and update it, and then have the new people going through the professional course see all this new great patient education materials, as well as taking these educational materials and publishing them on the website as well as a resource.
And that
so we're multi-purposing this information. The patient education module, introducing that module in the professional course and upgrading the information there, and making it a general resource on the website, Oregon Pain Guidance website, as it is currently.
No.
Thanks, sorry, we're out of time, but hopefully that's been informative.
It needs to be on the Oregon Pain Commission.
Will between now and the April 23rd meeting, will we be able to see the videos of the content that was produced yesterday? Or the roughs or anything?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, if you want to be involved and sort of review,
well, you hyped it all up, and now I want to see it.
I know, me too. So it's probably kind of 2-3 weeks of post-production, because you take multiple kids and then you put them together and things like that. But we would love, once they're in sort of advanced roughed out, when we say, this is basically a condom, and then we invite comments.
Yeah. So when we get to the place where we have roughed out video, and I'm going to take 1 or 2 comments from the phone in just a second, and then we need to move on. If there's people who want to be involved, we'll send an announcement out to the commissioners, and we can send content and invite feedback. Was there a comment on the phone?
There was, and Nora, I apologize. I have to leave after my comment, but I would put out that Quest would love to be a beta test site for this, where we would use mentors as the key staffing to help get this into people's hands and to help drive that train.
Great.
So thank you for your work, Mark. Thank you for a lovely video, and thank you to everybody that helped put it together who was on the commission.
Great. Thanks for your comments, David.
Okay, this was incredibly robust. Thank you, Mark, very much for putting that all together and for all your work. It's going to be a great gift to the community. So we'll get you the rough, and we'll have some communication back and forth, and that'll be an opportunity to have some input. Great. We're going to move on in the agenda. We're a little bit behind, but that's okay. We can catch up. Update on the clinician module. We kind of touched on that, actually. The upcoming revisions, that as I see it, would probably be to weave in the new content from the patient app as soon as we're able to into the clinician module. And that's something that Mark had just touched upon. So I think we should just take a moment. Are you taking off, Mark?
Unless you need me for anything.
No, just checking. Yeah. So maybe we should just take a moment to talk about that. If that is the plan. Actually, before you go, Mark Stevens, assuming that the commission wants to make the revisions of weaving in the new content that's produced in the app into the clinician module, what kind of time frame could we think about being able to do that? And do we still have some funding to make that happen?
Sorry, just say that again.
So weaving in the new content from the patient app back into the clinician module, like you just talked about.
Yeah.
So my first question is, do we have some funding to do that? And what would the time be?
I think the funding is supplied already by the state. I need to have a conversation.
Wanting to just let people do whatever they want with this content. And
that came to a lot. It was not only just protecting the intellectual content, making sure that there was that at least the core concepts are contained.
The fidelity of it.
But we have a commission that has no funding, and so how if other people are going to use this content that was developed from resources that we have, then there's an expectation in some way, shape, or form that maybe there should be some sort of licensing. And that was the problem, is we keep running into this. There's the commission, and then there's OHA, and everybody has these competing values that in order to we just don't have resources for this commission. And yet we have a wonderful resource in this clinician module. So how is it that we can make sure that, yes, we want people to use that module, but we also need to make sure that the investment that the commission has done and the state of Oregon has done is in some way being valued on that.
Right.
And is returning so that we can then continue to reinvest.
Yes, exactly. So, and I'm not clear on what the project is or how did that come to our attention and what happened?
An email that came through, Governor Fleece's copied me on it, that there was a class for, it was a Compass project. There's some peer-to-peer workers or somebody that were going to use it for a project.
So, good project. The question then becomes how are we going to mesh that in a way that maintains some cohesiveness and some collegiality, but also isn't just, again, this kind of bootstrapped commission trying to, if we're going to do good work, we need resources.
Yeah. So, I guess what I'm thinking is that this comes back to a question that has to do with the Oregon Health Authority. It's a legalistic question part. And so we need to have that conversation happen. And I know we've started it, stopped at the idea of like licensing to other states. And this is an example of that now. So how can we move forward with that?
Yeah, this is Jason. We're going to have
a
discussion. Just like everything with the state, it takes time.
Yeah. So is this request on hold right now?
The request for them to use...
From OHSU?
I don't have any ability to stop. But part of the difficulty is that I believe, it's really unclear who would put that request on hold. Mark, I believe Lisa Shields had given authorization for that to go forward. So
that's part of what you worked on. Yeah, she said she gave her blessing to continue on with it. So then I know that we had an internal discussion with the leadership here about it, and that we were working on it internally. I think Dana was going to discuss that with her counterpart on the account. I think it's all busy with all this.
Yeah, and I guess we keep returning to that point, and we need to. I think through the course of this year, for sure, we need to start formalizing these roles, or at least knowing who has control, or who needs to be talking, or how these conversations will be taking place. Otherwise, we keep coming up to this again and again, where we don't know, and it's being worked on somewhere, but we don't. What is that? In an April meeting, can we discuss this, or is it a September meeting? We're sort of in this limbo realm where we're personally, I feel like we have a mission, and we are wanting to have some control of that mission so that we can move it forward, but we're not actually having control of moving the mission forward because of the other moving pieces, if that makes any sense.
Right, including in this case, with all due respect, we all love Lisa Shields and what she's been able to make happen. Lisa Shields isn't on the Pain Commission.
I can commit to bringing an update on the status of clarifying roles and responsibilities with regards to the pain module. And
that would be great.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
I promise it won't be resolved, but I can bring an update.
Great, thank you. And in terms of this project, so we still don't know if we have this body of people from OHSU working with somebody in Washington using our content. We don't know that. Is that right? Whether it's been stopped or started.
It is.
They're using it.
I have not heard anything.
Do we have a contact point with that?
Maybe we should think it in our own best interest. Maybe we should go back and pursue that. Maybe you and I can work on that. Mark.
At least a touch base, and again, from a collegiality standpoint, is hey, we have expertise in this. We see that you're interested in this module. Would you like to, can you inform us what this project is, so that we can, a very soft touch, just so that because this also may, on a big picture, may actually mess with the new patient education or the peer networking education things, and rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every 2 weeks or every couple months in different agencies, we need to start talking so that we have some consistency and congruency and shared resources and all of that. This may be an opportunity to do that.
Because it can also bring up a sticky point around the app, too. Around anyone and everyone using the app in their own clinics. If it is supposed to be some kind of money maker,
no, it's not.
It won't make any money. It may not lose as much money as other interventions.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you get a soft reimbursement and clinics start trying to do things and they're losing money doing it, act right there, you get no traction.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems with pain.
Money maker is clinics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is because so much of these active modalities have no funding stream to support them. So with this idea that you can track it and actually have a clinic staff member, at least you're not losing as much revenue trying to add these therapies.
Yeah, whereas if we contact them, maybe they're going to say, no, we just want to make copies of the handouts, and then it's like, well, of course you can make copies.
Do that.
But if you want, there was somebody who used the Providence Pain Toolkit and completely modified my content and didn't credit me. So, we don't want that,
Wow.
So, yeah, I think we should need to do due diligence and see what's happening. Okay, let's see. Upcoming revisions, we talked about that. OMA reporting. You want to quickly talk about that? Great. Mission statement. Can we vote on this thing? No, we don't have a...
We don't have a quorum.
We should have put that at the top. Oh, we are ready, thanks to Michelle Coder and Rebecca Duffy, we are ready to vote on the mission statement. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Okay, coming. I know. I'm so sorry we didn't vote on that today. We'll pretend we did. Okay, and then lastly, we do have more membership vacancies that have opened up. We have 3, because we had 2, but then we had one that we had filled, Amy Marr, and then she moved out of the state. So we have 3 to fill, and we are in the process right now, correct?
Yes.
Have we had any applicants yet?
Yes, we have probably at least 8 applicants have received about 20 emails.
Do we have a link for where the lander is? Because I think I tried to find it.
So what they would do is send me an email.
And just email you.
Email me, and then I will send out an application and information about the commission, on the meeting, what the responsibilities are, and how
Okay.
So, Mark, are we able to recruit commission members into that evaluation process? Are we required to just have that be the leadership team that reviews the applications?
Historically, it's been the leadership team that produce that matrix who you submit for approval to OHA leadership
and that's largely for efficiency. But just so that people know, the way that we went, when we did this last round, we had awesome applicants, and we put together a matrix that included, the different areas of expertise, the populations that people served in, or whether they were, community members, or whether they served rural population, or they served, urban low income. And then we also looked at geographical location, and we attempted to have as broad a spread and balance and complement our existing commission membership. So we'll do the same with this one. So if you know awesome people who you want to have involved in the commission, this is the time to get their applications in, right? So let's see. Anything else? We have 5 more minutes to talk about any last things that we need to consider, especially to put on the topics for next meeting, or that we need to be addressing in the interim time. Folks on the phone.
This is Jason. I just have a couple of brief updates. So the Oregon taper guidelines group that was meeting last year, those were released and posted on the web, I believe, yesterday.
Okay.
Also, the PERC had committed to doing a new review of its back coverage in light of some forthcoming reports from AHRQ. Those reports have been delayed, and so that will be coming to our March meeting, but we're still waiting for those reports to do that work, so I'll up the date on that.
Can you say what AHRQ stands for again for all of us?
Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, something along those lines. It's a federal agency that does research on medical and health systems issues. And they have some upcoming reports they've been working on related to pharmacologic and non-pharmacologic treatments for chronic pain and back pain and so forth.
At the federal level, that will inform the HERC work.
Correct.
That's tracking that, right? Thank you. Great. So the taper guidelines are posted where? On the OHA website?
Yeah, there's an OHA website. The link I have is just to the OHA publications, and we can distribute that to the members.
Great.
I don't know if it's been posted to a public-facing website yet.
It looks like it's on the Oregon.gov site. At least there's something that there's
we need to be aware of. Thank you so much, folks on the phone, for hanging in there. This seems like this is becoming more and more of a remote attended meeting. Hopefully more folks can come live to the next one. I know obviously if you live in remote places it's unlikely, but for those who live closer, we can be in the room. That's nice for everybody. But thank you so much for hanging in there, and lots of exciting things in the works, and enjoy the rest of our